Paul, it's good to be with you, man. How are you?
Absolutely great to be with you and great to be in person.
I know.
We're so used to doing this, like these types of things over Zoom, right?
We shared the speaking platform at an event a bit ago, but honestly, it was a weird event. I'm not sure anybody felt comfortable that day. It was kind of at the end of COVID. There was social and emotional distancing.
Yeah.
And we were also, the speakers were quite far from the audience. We almost kind of, you could say they were looking down on us because it was a theater setting. We were kind of in a pit.
Mm-hmm.
A beautiful venue, by the way. It was the Imagine Theaters. I love those guys, Paul Glanz and those guys. But it was an interesting little adaptation for anybody that was doing a presentation. I enjoyed yours very much.
Thank you. I appreciate that. There's some things I would tweak in there, and I'm always critical. You know, my biggest critic, I always want to keep making it better. That was my first run at that one. But
yeah, but that's part of it. You get done and you go, I always say, like best next time, in that order. What did I like best, and what do I want to do next time? One of the things I like best about yours was you spent so much time talking about stuff that had nothing to do with what you were really there to talk about. You talked about your great family, and you talked about your, I guess it's a hobby, but you get paid for it.
I don't actually, the firefighting?
Yeah.
I don't get paid for it. It's all volunteer.
Completely. Which made it even more interesting. Well, we saw pictures and stuff, and so let's start with that, man. I know that we're in Troy, Michigan right now, and you volunteer for the Troy Fire Department. How on earth does a city get a volunteer fire department?
So it's amazing. Troy is the largest fire department in Oakland County, and one of the largest volunteer fire departments in the country, and it started as a volunteer department. So Troy, in its infancy, and even like I remember where I live at Coolidge and Square Lake area. As a kid, it was a flashing red light, four-way flashing red light. So this isn't that long ago, and it grew up on this volunteer fire department and has never changed since then. And it's challenging because a lot of the departments around us are all paid departments, and there's a little bit of animosity there sometimes when we run a department of 100 and around 30 to 160 individuals for a fraction of the budget of what some of these neighboring cities do. But it would be hard to take a full-time department and go back into like a volunteer system because you'd be taking away jobs, you'd be taking away people's livelihood, and you don't want to do that. So we have the benefit of that. I carry around a fire pager that's attached to my hip all the time, technically responsible for nights and weekends, but I'm close enough to the station here in Troy that I'll leave during the day sometimes. And that one that I put in my presentation was a big tanker fire right around the corner from here.
Yeah. And people not familiar with Troy, Michigan, man, this is a burgeoning community. There's a lot of large buildings here.
80,000 people, 120,000 business professionals. And it is very uncommon. Typically, volunteer departments are very rural based.
Yes.
And so it's very uncommon a city this size to have a volunteer department.
Yeah.
So we don't get paid. It's not a paid on call or anything like that. After 10 years, you do qualify for a pension. So that's a nice benefit.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. And sometimes one thing that I like about it, it's the only opportunity in my life where I'm not the boss yet. I say yet because, I have aspirations to be a lieutenant and a captain maybe someday. Where I get to be an employee almost. I'm a firefighter, and I have lieutenants I report to when I show up on scene, and captains and chiefs.
Yeah.
And it's a chance for me to practice being the best possible employee team member that I can be.
Yeah.
Right. And learning and watching other leadership styles too. So there's that element of it that I kind of enjoy in there.
Well, we're going to talk about your boss gig in a minute, and it is huge. I am so impressed at what you've done with your organization. If you're listening at home, by the way, you can watch the video version of this on the Michael Angelo Caruso YouTube channel. If you're watching the video, you can listen on the podcast platforms, iTunes and Podbean and all that. Before we get to the boss gig, I asked former Mayor Jim Ellison from Royal Oak one time, if it's so good to have a volunteer fire department, all these benefits, why doesn't Royal Oak have one? And he said exactly what you said. You have to start that way. You can't do away with an existing traditional model.
Yeah.
It'd be mutiny and all kinds of problems.
Yeah. And even right now, last week there was that big fire out at Oakland Hills, and the country club and a lot of neighboring departments, they called in for support in Bloomfield Township, and a lot of them had to drive through Troy to get out to that fire.
Oh.
And Troy wasn't called because there's still a little a little bit of that butting the heads of, a union shop calling in a volunteer department. And
Well, how
how
interesting,
will
though,
that
that
look?
they would rather call cities further away.
Yeah. Eventually, they did call on us later on that evening after everybody is exhausted and they just needed more bodies. And we were more than happy to help and more than happy to do a great job.
Hopefully nobody got hurt in the interim.
Nobody did get hurt. And they have good resources. All the neighboring departments support each other. That's something you'd love to always help in any way you possibly can. And maybe someday that'll change. But I understand the reasoning behind it and why they make the decisions they do. And that's because, if you call in this department that's not getting paid and then the town people start saying, wait, they're doing it for free. Why should we be paying you?
Yeah.
Even though nobody's ever going to say that. But I get the reasoning there a little bit.
Yeah. What a tangled web we weave.
That is.
Let's talk about the boss gig, man. You've done something that is so incredible. I guess in two stages it really impressed me. One is you identified a void, which is really hard to do here in 2022. It seems like everything's already been invented. I know that's not true, but if you just try to find holes in markets or try to create a market or create a product, it is extremely difficult. And you found a void. And then the second thing that you did was you made it your own.
Yeah.
Like you created the association. It's called SUBTA. Tell us about it.
Correct. Yeah. The Subscription Trade Association. And the story is an interesting one because we were going back, 20 some years. I've had a website development marketing company I've always run. In 2014, two close friends of mine, Chris George and John Hodgie, came and said, we have this idea for a subscription box called Gentleman's Box. I said, that's interesting. I'd love to help you with it and build the website. In exchange, take an equity stake in the company and be a partner in it and do a little trade of services there. They said, sure. Fast forward 2 more years. We're running Gentleman's Box. It's doing well. And we start talking about we want to attend a conference to meet other subscription box companies. We're like, we kind of know what we're doing, but we need to learn more. How do we learn more from people? Start Googling. Google didn't exist. And I'm like, guys, man, I feel like we should launch this conference. We should do this. And it sounds easy, and it turns out running a conference is an incredibly difficult thing. I liken it to like a wedding on steroids because you want everybody to be happy. You want the sponsors to be happy, the speakers to have an amazing experience, the attendees to feel valued. And so we launched our first Sub Summit in 2016 in Detroit because we saw nobody was doing it. And we expected to break even or lose a couple bucks. We're like, look, we'll even if we lose a few dollars, we'll gain the knowledge and we'll get to meet people. We're so fortunate. We had Katya Beecham, the founder of Birchbox, come to that first one. Michael Brookham, co-founder, co-CEO of FabFitFun. At the time, 2 of the biggest names in subscription were there at our very first event. 216 people, our friends, our family, we got FedEx wrote us a $12,000 check and it was amazing. And we made a few bucks.
And that's how what you're offering is right on time.
Yeah.
You didn't have to ask them to come. You didn't have to teach them about it. They were like, ready. Let's do it.
I remember that first night of the event of Sub Summit, Michael Brookham sitting there with us and going, guys, this conference, what you're doing right now is going to be bigger than your subscription box. And we're like, no, oh, that's cool, really nice. But we felt we were really getting somewhere with our subscription box, and he was spot on.
Yeah.
We ended up exiting the subscription box a year and a half ago, sold it to Cigar Club because SUBTA and the conference got so big, we wanted to focus all our time and energy on that. We said we had to, let's find a happy home for this.
Yeah.
And that way we're more vendor agnostic in the space too. We're not, talking about, the different suppliers we use or showing any favoritism. We didn't want to do that. So, and the trade association itself didn't come until a year later after the first event.
Ah.
So we held our first conference in September 2016. And by the way, we only gave ourselves a 3-month runway. We came up with the idea in May of 2016, gave ourselves this are we going to do this or not by June, July. And we knew we wanted to hold in Detroit to be close to home.
Yep.
And we knew we had to do it while the weather was still warm-ish. So we did September.
Because nobody would come.
Right. Nobody wants to come to Detroit in the winter. It's cold.
Even the Detroit people wouldn't come.
Even the auto show finally figured that out. And so but then we knew we wanted to get into kind of this May, June timeframe. And we looked at it based on when other conferences were and things like that. So we held the next one pretty quick right after in end of May of 2017 in Austin, doubled the size, got to almost 500 attendees.
Wow.
And it was leading up to that event that our PR guy, Dan Sharon at the time, said, hey guys, you should really align your conference to a trade association out there. That way you can be their conference and their thing. So again, more intense Googling, and found it didn't exist. Nobody was running a trade association for the subscription industry. We said, okay, well, that sounds easy. Let's create that. Turns out also not an easy thing to do. But we saw that need and we got right into it. And so that's when the trade association launched. And now they work hand in hand. And, we're still figuring out the trade association side of things. We're still figuring out the right way to help continue to provide value and grow and be great for everybody. And that's part of business.
Yeah. For the uneducated, we hear the term subscription box a lot. Maybe some people don't know exactly what that means. Put it in Flintstone language for everybody.
So subscription box, really there's like two categories. First is discovery and delight. Things that you didn't know you needed, didn't know maybe you wanted, that you'd be introduced to along the way.
Yeah.
So Birchbox was the original discovery and delight. It'd send you samples of different stuff. You'd get to know, what you're looking for or what you might want.
These are low price point items.
Yeah. You'd sign up for Birchbox for $15 to $25 a month, and it would send you samples to try, and you could go buy the full size of the product.
So you'd never know what you were getting. You just
Right.
knew you were going to get something.
Our subscription box, Gentleman's Box, was exactly the same way. It was not necessarily samples, but it was discovery and delight. We would send you socks, ties, pocket square, everything every month to create an ensemble that would make you into a true gentleman,
Nice.
as we'd say. And so,
Did you send anybody manners?
sometimes we'd try, put a little booklet in there, teach you some manners. And so the flip side of that is replenishment, the subscribe and save, the Dollar Shave Clubs of the world. There's underwear subscriptions, there's toothpaste subscriptions, all sorts of different things out there. Those are anything that comes in like a physical box, as you can see. If anybody's watching this visually, we have a whole bunch in our room here.
Yeah.
Now as SUBTA, so when we first launched, we were really rooted in subscription box. We were known as the subscription box conference because that's the world we grew up in essentially. But what we've come to adapt over the years is representing what we call all 6 segments of subscription. That ranges from media and publication to digital subscriptions to subscribe and save subscription box, and you name it. The overall industry as a whole is a $250 billion industry.
Wow.
Subscription. Amazon being one of the biggest players out there.
Yes.
You subscribe to Amazon Prime every year, and when I commonly say like they can charge me whatever they want, I get so much value out of it.
Yeah.
And
they heard you because the
I
price
know.
went up again.
I should have kept my mouth shut.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a really fun space, and and one that's continuing to grow. I mean, Volvo has a successful car subscription now.
What's in it?
So the way they do it is Volvo has said, we take these 2-3 models of our car, and rather than buy the car itself and go out and get your insurance and go out and worry about your maintenance, we're going to give you one set monthly price, and everything's included. The vehicle, the insurance, all the maintenance on it. And it's a totally unique model that they've kind of turned the auto industry up on its head.
Is it like a monthly lease then for the car?
Essentially, but everything's included. You don't need to worry about anything else outside of it, just driving it. They take care of the insurance. They take care of, everything outside of that. Now, the flip side of that industry, and I have 2 big goals. Number one of them is to have Elon Musk on my stage one day.
Yeah.
And we'll get there with that. Because Tesla has long said that they will be a subscription company.
Oh.
Rather than own the vehicle, you'll subscribe to access to the vehicle. And this is where they're going with their autonomous driving. So, we use our cars a fraction of the day. It's sitting, they're sitting out here in the parking lot. They're sitting in our garage.
Yeah.
So why should we have this big, hard cost that's in our lives every day? We need a car, go in the app, order one up.
Yep.
As a Tesla subscriber, it shows up, takes me to where I want to go.
Yeah.
And the car goes on to the next person.
When I first heard that, it made my head explode. Of course, we were into ride sharing by that time. And then we were into Airbnb, where you would live in somebody's place for a time.
Right.
And a lot of people raised their eyebrow at that, like,
Like, this is
I don't know what's under those couch cushions, And then I was hearing, it all starts in California, that in California, if you go to California, how did that work? That they would leave their car at the airport.
Yeah. There's
And then-
Turo, one of those apps that does that.
Or is it a thing now?
Yeah.
And they would wash the car when you drop it off, and then they would rent it to people that flew to California while you were out of town,
Yeah.
because you don't need your own car. You just need a car when you need it.
Yeah.
And the extension of that dogma, I guess, is what you're saying is we're not going to own cars anymore. You just get a car when you need one.
And there's so many different ways to look at that, right? I live in a cul-de-sac here in Troy, and I've got 5-6 neighbors around. We all own lawnmowers. We
Right.
use our lawnmower once a week. Why do we all need to own a lawnmower? Now we subscribe to lawn services. That's the thing, but maybe we could subscribe to one lawnmower that would be delivered when we need it that one time a week.
I once met a guy, Steve Alice. He's retired now from Southgate Fire Department, and he gave a talk about something called duplicity of services, that every city seems to want to own its own stuff. But maybe every city doesn't have to have its own post office. Every city doesn't have to have its own fire department.
Yeah.
Or police department. What kind of economy and efficiency and efficacy could you get if you bundled geos together somehow?
Yeah.
I have no idea if this is even feasible, but it reminds me of ways that we can recreate things and repackage it.
Yeah. And I think there's obviously conversations in there around jobs and employment
Yes.
and, taking away from that. But I think a lot of that started to shift and change, especially during COVID, as where people wanted to work and how they worked and how they looked at work changed.
Yeah.
So I think you're going to start to see a lot more of that.
And WeWork. Remember that guy, Adam Newman?
Yeah.
Interesting story, checkered past a little bit, but he had an interesting concept that, that people didn't need to go to the office anymore and they could just go to this communal place where they could still be with people, but you didn't have all the work politics. I love that kind of thinking.
And kind of almost a little bit ahead of his time. Now he was a story in itself,
Yeah.
right? But it was interesting. And now, here we are in 2022, and that's pretty much a thing, where people are using WeWork. And WeWork has gone on to be successful and kind of flipped that.
Yeah.
Had to
And
shuffle some
speaking
things
of
around a
ahead of
little
its time, how about Napster? He was a guy
Oh my
that
gosh.
said you could use my song list, and I'm going to use your song list. And they had trouble with figuring out the money at the
Yeah.
beginning, but we're there
Licensing.
now with Pandora and some of these other pay per monthly fees and stuff where they hit your credit card.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
Yeah, there's a company we talk with quite a bit and admire a lot called Fernish.
With
And
a F.
Fernish, yep, Fernish.
Oh, F-E.
And they have a similar company called Feather, and kind of a competitor to theirs, and they do furniture subscription. And what their pitch is, people move around so much now, especially Gen Y, I think is the next one up, and a little less millennials as they're getting families now and getting a little more settled in. But what happens is people move so much, they leave furniture behind, or furniture gets worn, and it gets wasted. And we're filling a lot of landfills with a lot of furniture. Their pitch is you can rent or subscribe to the furniture, have it for that 12 months that coincides with your lease. And when you're done, they take it back and they either refurbish it to go on to the next subscriber.
Wow.
Or they donate it, or they find a much happier home and recycle it appropriately.
Was it Rent the Runway that would mail you a gown
Yeah.
for Friday night? I thought that was bizarre because I thought women were pretty proprietary about, the clothes that they wore. They had to fit a certain way. And this, I actually had a girlfriend at the time, and her outfits would show up in bags, plastic bags on the porch. I'm like, that's wrong.
Right.
But it turns out none of it's wrong if it works, if that's what people want, if it's affordable, if it's easy, convenient.
I was just had a call with employee number 10 from Rent the Runway, and we were talking about that and how they ended up building one of the world's largest dry cleaners, and they really didn't even realize what they're getting into because of all the garments they're going in and out. My wife's done it a number of times, and I think over time they figured out nuances to that model. Like women would get maybe one dress in and it wouldn't fit, and then they'd be bummed. Well, now my wife told me about this when she did it. They send you 2 dresses for the price of one. Right, so if one doesn't fit or you don't like it, you've got the other one there as a backup, and you can try out.
Which is genius, because the additional packaging is well worth the disappointment and the poor SAT survey if the one fails.
Yeah.
Wow.
And it was, so this comes back to where we started on this, like everything that can be invented has been invented, looking at that and saying, not a chance. There's so many more opportunities out there in commerce and subscription commerce and business as a whole. It's fun. It's fun to explore.
I know that you do an annual event with SUBTA. This year, this is 2022, everybody. It's in Orlando in June.
Yep.
How many people are coming?
We are on track for 1,500 plus attendees.
That is no small event.
No, and pre-COVID we were over 1,000. Moved to virtual during COVID. Had between all of our events up to 5,000 virtual attendees. The Sub Summit virtual had over 2,000 in itself, and it's because there is such a big reach of subscription today.
Yeah,
We talk about topics from acquisition and retention to fulfillment and operations, down to personnel and the war for top talent and things like that.
yeah.
So we're excited. We have we have DoorDash coming to the stage this year. Talk about Dash Pass.
Are they bringing food?
I hope so. I hope so. No, we bring amazing food in, and it comes in, and then Netflix coming to speak on some awesome stuff too. So it's a fun event, and it's something we do every year. So depending on when you watch this or when you listen to this, we will be ready for our next Sub Summit 23. Will be in Dallas. Again, we're always in that first week, the week right after Memorial Day.
How many members are in the association?
We have over 2,000 members in our trade association.
And what's the long-term plan? What's the market bear?
We see. I think we've really just scratched the surface with what we're doing. To be totally honest, we're very fortunate. We're the leading voice in the space, and we take that very seriously and thoughtfully and carefully. We want to make sure we're representing the space appropriately. We're helping lead people. One of the big things for us is we want to make sure if you're running a subscription company, your mentality isn't how can I lock people in and not get them to ever cancel by tricking them out of the cancellation, flow, or not make that, time into long-term contracts. We want subscription to be this, I don't even know I'm subscribed to something. I'm loving the product so much. I'm loving that relationship with the company so much.
Yeah.
And I may come and go as a subscriber, but I'm building a relationship with that brand. One company that's done this really well is Peleton. They've been beat up a lot in the press lately.
Yeah.
But they have raving fans.
Yeah.
People absolutely love the classes. They love the instructors.
It's more than fans. It's community.
That's 100% it.
Yeah.
And that's what we preach is communities and relationships, and, building those connections will really stand the test of time and last longer than just those one-off transactions. And that's why we love subscription so much too.
I did a blog post a while back about one of Peloton's trainers. Mm-hmm. I can't remember his name now, but he was a very interesting cat, and he had such a huge following. They think this guy's Elvis.
Right.
And he's on YouTube videos.
Might be Elvis.
He might be Elvis. Although I'm pretty sure Elvis didn't ride the bike very much.
Yeah, exactly. That's part of the problem.
I remember too being 17 or 18 years old and getting ready to come into my gentlemanhood and joining Vic Tanny. Do you remember
Vic
the
Tanny.
gym?
Yes, I remember.
And you
Vic
talk
Tanny.
about a company with a terrible cancellation flow.
Oh, gosh.
Trying to get out of your Vic Tanny subscription, you almost had to go to court.
Yeah.
And some cable companies had a reputation for that for a while.
Do you want to know my second goal?
Yeah.
Is to fix Comcast customer care problem.
Well, that was the one I was going to mention. Is it still an issue?
Terrible.
You remember that story? It's a cute little story about how this guy calls Comcast helpline, and he's on 47 minutes. He goes out and gets a bite to eat. He comes back. He's still on the call. And then he decides, I'm going to tweet my dissatisfaction. He tweets it, and they answer the tweet in like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
And he said, I got to go. And he hangs up the phone. That's how fast things are changing, how we communicate, how we serve each other, how we voice our displeasure with something that's happening.
But here's a company that could be your best friend, right? They're giving you...
Should be.
They should be. They're giving you a lifeline that you love, like television, internet, and even more so the internet connection than anything today, and can build such a long-lasting relationship. In a lot of places, people are held hostage. They don't have another choice.
Yeah.
And here in Troy, we're lucky. We have Wide Open West and Comcast.
Yeah.
And for me, one of the driving factors, when I was a kid, I remember going over to my grandma's house and her saying, I just had the worst experience with Comcast. And she told me the story about how she was on hold with them to negotiate her bill because they jacked it up. And the guy thought he put her on hold and didn't. And he said, it turned to the guy next to him and said, I'm going to give this old lady a discount because she's probably going to be dead anyway soon.
Whoa.
Not even kidding you. And that to me was, that culture starts at the top. If that's the way your people are thinking, and
Yeah, by now we've been through how many tops in Comcast? I mean, this is a decades-old reputation.
right, and that's what's amazing to me is how I don't understand how that can't be fixed. And this is what I love about what we do, is I believe we have the chance to help make this better. And if I can get somebody from Comcast to come to my conference and sit there and listen to a talk from somebody who is doing it right and is doing it better, and say, you know what, maybe we should actually care about this, because here's going to be the residual effect.
Yeah.
I've now impacted millions
Oh, yeah.
of lives
For sure.
in so many different ways.
You think they would have signed up already?
I hope. Well, that's the goal. I keep talking about it, and eventually it'll manifest itself.
Well, we got 2 comps for you, Comcast.
I will, as many tickets as Comcast wants, I will provide them.
Are you a subscriber?
No. Well, where I have to be, right? So here at the office, it's our backup internet connection.
Yeah.
Because I have no choice.
Well, that's another one of the issues, right? That it's thrust upon you. There is no choice. It's a
Right.
kind of a monopolistic
I
situation.
own a small pizza shop in Southfield. No other option. I searched far and wide for somebody other than Comcast.
Yeah, you
Had
can
to.
imagine people making decisions about where to move based on what the cable company's going to be.
Can you tell me the options of the? And no longer is it like tell me about the schools. It's tell me about who the internet providers are.
That's
in
right.
your
That's the
area.
most important thing.
And that's where I think Starlink and what they're doing with SpaceX launching their satellite internet could be very, very big for them, because it gives people another choice
Yeah.
anywhere in the world.
Yeah, wow. Another thing that you talked about in your talk where we first met was your fantastic family. You're a throwback to the old days, man, because you have such a big family.
Yeah, four
Also,
kids.
4 kids. And I grew up in a family with 3 brothers, so we had 6 people in the nuclear family. Are they mixed genders?
So we have, it's funny because I tell my wife and my kids, I put them in every presentation. It's always important to me. My wife is the world's most amazing wife. She teaches full-time here in Troy, tolerates me, tolerates the firefighting, and helps run the family as well. And our first 2 are twins, identical twin girls that are about 11 and a half-ish.
Yeah.
And they're amazing, Allie and Morgan, and 2 totally, identical but totally different personalities. Parker will be 8 coming up in here in April. He's a little boy. And then our other son, Logan, will be 4 coming up here March 12th.
So 2 and 2.
2 and 2.
Yeah.
And, so lucky. The boys are good buddies. The girls are best friends. And we're so fortunate.
And they're coming up into a world of subscriptions. I mean, it's going to be a major part of their life. It won't be an anomaly. It won't be a one-off or an occasional thing. It'll be, how many subscriptions do you think the average person will have here in a few years?
It's interesting because one of our big keynote speakers at the conference this year is a company called Truebill. And Truebill's pitch is they help you manage your subscriptions and help you cancel the ones you don't want and keep the ones you do. And I invited them on purpose because I think that is a really important lesson for these subscription companies to look at, but also as a subscriber and where we come from as subscribers now, how we interact with these brands, these companies.
Yeah.
Now, it'd be interesting to see where my kids end up. I could tell you I've dozens upon dozens of subscriptions. Netflix, Disney Plus, HBO Max, Comcast, things like that. But I really wonder, I think, our kids' lives are going to be driven by subscription and driven by, but they'll have less transactions though too.
Yeah.
As a result of that.
And there'll be dependable hits to the credit card. It won't be surprising one-offs. It'll be something that it's recurring and it's in the budget and it's something that we're planning for.
Yeah, and things that you need and want. And so that'll definitely be interesting to see how that evolves with them. There's already things that they subscribe to from, when they were born. They were ABC Mouse subscribers.
All right.
Now via our credit card and our, we paid for it, but from almost the first year of life, they had a subscription that they were relying upon and used.
Paul, where can people find out more about SUBTA?
So on our website, SUBTA.com, SUBTA.com. If you're looking for any of our events or things that we're doing, that's a great way to find it. And then, the Sub Summit event is SubSummit.com. And so you can find all about that, whatever point in time you find it. We have a free basic membership for SUBTA, the community out there. If people want to get in and start to learn and have conversations. So we always try and support in any way we can.
It feels like we've just gotten a glance into the future. And the future's in good hands. Thank you so much for all you do for not only the subscription box arena, but also here in Troy, fighting fires and keeping us safe.
Absolutely. Thanks, Michael. Thanks for having me. I truly appreciate it.
Pleasure, Paul.